and live your life today. It doesn't matter what they say.
Welcome to another episode of Red Lotus Life. We are so excited to have a special guest this week. As always, I have my beautiful co-creator here, Sara Elizabeth Hoffman, and we are spiral practitioners. What we do here at Red Lotus Life is we specialize in working with survivors of domestic violence, abuse, and also human trafficking. And then every once in a while, we bring on a special guest so that we can have resources. This is what we like to do with Red Lotus Life. Originally, it was created to bring resources and information to people so that they can pick and choose with what resonates with them. So this week we have Anne Marie Terrell. Did I say your last name right?
You said
Terrell?
it right.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, so Anne Marie Terrell, I've known her for a little while in Arete. I don't know if any of you know what Arete is. It's Arete Syndicate. It is the mentorship program that's amazing. It's for high-level entrepreneurs, high-level performers, and it is ran and done by Ed Milet and Andy Frisella. And it's just been beautiful, the connections that I've made in there. And Anne Marie is one of those people that we connected a couple of months ago, and it has just been a beautiful relationship that has happened. As always, everything happens for a reason. Everyone crosses our paths for a reason. And she has an amazing story of resilience and healing that has been part of her big why as to why she's in the profession that she is now. So now she is a certified financial planner. You have a CDFA, which I'm going to ask you more about because I'm not quite sure what that is, but I know that it's super special to what you do. I think when you and I were talking, you had said that it was you and one other person on the entire West Coast, basically, that had this certification.
Yeah, at least Northern California and Southern Oregon.
Okay, there you go. And you specialize in financials and when people are separating and in divorce and things like that. And so I know the second that you started to tell me about what you do, and then whenever I heard about your experience and where you were and how you've gotten to where you are today, I absolutely knew we had to have you on the show. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor.
Thank you. Okay, so talk to us. Tell us I know that was a terrible introduction because there's so much more to you and to what you do. Tell us more about what is a certified financial planner and a little bit more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again for having me. It was great that we could connect. That's why I love Arate is the relationships. But yeah, so I've been in the financial world for about 17 years. Excuse me, and I've been a certified financial planner since 2012. So that's considered the gold standard in our business. It basically means that you have had at least 3 years of experience advising clients, you have your bachelor's degree, and then you've gone through this process that involves interim exams and then a large board exam at the end that they compare to the bar exam. It's very difficult, and that's actually a little bit part of my journey too. So I obtained that in 2012, but I started the journey to obtain it in 2008.
Wow.
And the reason it took me so long and that it took me 4 attempts before I passed was I went through a divorce and I had a baby in the middle of it. So again, it's part of my story with all of that. But I learned a lot along the way, and I'm really happy to have that designation. And then in 2019, I realized that there was a certification called the CDFA, which stands for Certified Divorce Financial Analyst. And that is a certification that allows you to give guidance to people when they're going through a separation or a divorce, sometimes coming alongside of their attorney. And it was just close to my heart to want to obtain that because of my story of having gone through a divorce myself in 2009. So yeah, it's been great. I'm excited to be able to help more people with it, but I thought the why behind it was probably more important than the actual letters or what they mean. It's that I wanted to get it to be able to help people at that juncture of their lives.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
I think it's so important because, okay, so I feel like the audience at this point understands and realizes I come from a pretty extreme situation, but I didn't have an attorney. I actually tried to get an attorney and retain one. And he was like, yes, this is what, when I originally had my consultation, he said, yep, this is what we can do, da 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 da. And I came back to retain him. And my ex-husband had actually already retained him. So then there was a conflict of interest, and things like
Yeah.
that. Yes, there's a lot of layers that actually go into that part. But I ended up not having anybody to represent me in any way. And so what happened with me is I actually walked away from everything. The entire life that we built
Mhm.
together. I
Mhm.
walked away from the home, all of our financial, I mean, just anything and everything. I walked away
Yeah.
from it all because so for me, I'm fascinated with this because this is actually common for people to
Very
just
common.
to walk away.
This
Yeah.
was also my experience as well.
Mm. To just walk away.
Yeah, basically what happened in my case was that I was just sort of railroaded by attorneys
Mhm.
and didn't have anybody to help me or represent me or even understand really what I deserved walking away from a 10-year marriage. And that sort of has happened in a couple of different situations for me. So I'm so excited to have you be in this space with us because I think that it's going to bring so much value to so many of our viewers.
Yeah, I remember Lori, I didn't know that was your story as well, and I'm sorry to hear that. And I remember Lori sharing just a tiny bit about it when we spoke, but it's common for a few reasons. One is as we unfortunately many of us know, when you've come out of a situation like that, we are not in the best of places. And we are not the best version of ourselves to be able to advocate for ourselves, to feel deserving of anything. Um, we're just kind of going through the motions and then realizing, okay, we've reached a point where we have to make some decisions, but don't even really know where to start.
Mhm.
The system is not super friendly to that. Obviously, most of us feel like, okay, we got out of this marriage, and then there's some things about the legal system that are not great. And then a lot of times we just want to be done. There's really, I remember my
Mhm.
date that the divorce was finalized, and it was such a feeling of relief and just release. And so I think that there is some of that goes on because you just want to get through it. And so I always try to think of myself in a way as an advocate to help people remember to fight for themselves and to fight for their children also, and to fight for what they deserve, even if they don't feel like they deserve anything at all.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I don't usually say I regret anything. I don't, and even this is not really a regret, but that is the one thing that I wish I would have realized is that I needed to fight for my children because I didn't end up even with, um, I just went totally blank. What is it called? When you,
Custody.
what is it?
Child
Uh,
support.
Child
oh,
support.
child. Sorry, I thought you were talking about custody. Yeah, support,
No,
spousal
yeah,
support or child
child
support.
support. So when we're talking financials, I didn't even go for it. I mean, it was just like what you said. To be honest with you, I was done. There were some other things that were going
Yeah.
on that influenced that. But for me, I was just like, I can rebuild. That's what I felt. I felt like I
Yeah.
can rebuild. I, you know, I've always been successful in what I do, and so I can rebuild. What I didn't think about was the life that my children could have had if I would have had the financial means to provide for them. And that's the part that I love that you even brought that up of fighting for your children in that way.
Mhm.
That's what it is. And, sometimes I think it can be a pride thing too, I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to walk away. I don't want anything from that person. I just want to wash my hands of it, which there's validity to all of that. And those feelings are real. But child support is, if, I mean, the calculators are there, and if it's calculated from the attorney that money is owed, I always tell people, even if you don't even want it, you don't even want to see it, there's always, accounts that people can set aside for their children's benefit down the road, whether it's college or whether it's, them starting their own business, just things like that. But it's the reason that one of the main reasons that I wanted to get my designation was because you have a highly emotional situation, but permanent and lasting financial decisions have to be made. And if you don't have help and you don't have an advocate, it can be a real disaster.
Mhm.
So what does it look like when somebody comes to you in the beginning? I mean, I have a financial advisor, but it's mostly for retirement and things like
Mhm.
that. Never in a million years have I thought about going to a financial advisor for this particularly.
Yeah, it's a good question. A lot of times it looks like that people aren't sure where to start, and they have heard, I had a gal come to me the other day. She had heard on a podcast, you should see a certified divorce financial analyst. And so that's how she found me. Sometimes they speak to their CPA and they recommend, they just don't know where to start. And so that's how it looks, is just a conversation. I may be the right person to be able to help them, or maybe I'm not. But it's just kind of taking a step in the right direction and getting information and getting informed. Oftentimes in a relationship, one of the spouses is more responsible for the finances. And so a lot of times I end up seeing the other one who doesn't feel as comfortable. And so I try to just make them feel really, really comfortable. No question is, off the table, or you should never feel dumb asking anything. And just kind of leading them through that process. And then a lot of times I'm going to direct them to, see an attorney to understand their rights a little bit. But the way we usually work is kind of partnering with the attorney on the settlement part of things when there's assets involved. I made a couple of notes. Some of the things I don't do, I don't calculate child support or alimony, anything like that. That's what the attorney does. But if there's businesses, if there's retirement accounts, if there's, rental properties or a primary residence, there's all of these things. And most people, they don't understand what they may be entitled to. They don't understand what may be fair. And so those are some of the things that we speak about.
Mm.
I think that's awesome because when you're in an unhealthy or abusive relationship, you're told that you have none of those things.
Mhm.
Like that's what you're told. You're told
Yep.
you didn't build it, you don't have it, or you go to get it. Like for me, I went to go and see what was left. There was nothing left.
Yeah.
Everything is
Yeah.
mine.
Yep.
Mhm.
Especially if one person has been responsible for working outside of the home and the other person has been working inside the home, which, let's just use the stay-at-home mom, for example. They work very, very hard and it's a never-ending job. And the spouse wouldn't have been able to build their financial situation to what it was had it not been for the support. But the one who's been physically working seems to have a sense of entitlement. And that's usually best case scenario. Worst case scenario is what you mentioned, Lori, where they've led the other person to believe that nothing is theirs. And that's a form of financial abuse for sure.
Mhm. Yeah. I want to say it was a couple of years ago. I don't know, it might have been 3 years ago at this point. I was on a friend's podcast and we
Uh-huh.
were talking about financial abuse because that is wealth is her niche.
Yeah.
And it was interesting how many people came out of the woodwork that didn't realize and understand that there's such a thing as financial abuse.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we were really able to open up eyes to that. And it was So maybe we can just talk about it real quick. Let's
That's
talk
what I was
about
gonna
it.
say. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd like to have that conversation, not only for like our personal information, but for those who might be on the other side, so that they might be able to have some awareness around the fact that that's what's happening.
Yeah, it's a great question, and a great topic because it's so prevalent, and like you said, most people don't even really know. So my experience, and again, I'm not a counselor or psychologist, but I've seen it from the terms of control. So
Mhm.
the finances, people have a lot of emotions around money. I've seen that in the 17 years that I've been doing this, but it oftentimes, it could look really extreme, such as, one spouse putting the other on a budget. They only get so much every month, and or making them account for every single purchase, making them feel bad if they purchase something without speaking to them about it, even if it's small. Or it could be a little bit more broad where, like we touched on, if everything's fine and then the moment comes where things are not fine, and separation is discussed, and then it's like, oh, none of this is yours. So I think it's like anything else, there's a lot of nuance to it. But
Mhm.
I feel the best when I see a husband and a wife where they both want to at least be involved, or the one who's maybe not as interested. I've seen it where, say, the husband says, honey, you really need to come in and we're going to talk about these things. And I want you to meet my financial advisor and feel really comfortable. Because if an event happens, and the other spouse is all of a sudden not there, they need to have some knowledge of it. So that's a healthy situation, whereas the unhealthy is some of the other things that we've alluded to.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah, there's so many different ways. I just got done with the giving tree, so I should probably tell
Yeah.
everybody else about that too. So the giving tree that we do every single year, we actually support families who have fled domestic violence during the holidays. And so it's super fresh on my mind right now on all the ways. I mean, it really, this this can affect every class of people, every financial realm.
Mhm.
And so and we had that. We actually had 6 families that we ended up supporting this year. I've been telling everyone 5, but alternatively, there was another one that we ended up supporting as well. And it literally was it's every class of people that this affects. And during this time, it was actually financial. Like it was financial was one of the biggest things. That's why we were there, was to help them financially with the holidays and to help them in any way we could. So it was that's one of the things that I actually have to share with people who come and help and support. And if we're lucky enough to actually go and deliver to the home, I have to prepare people for that and say, there's no judgments here. If we
Yeah.
show up at a nice home, that means nothing.
Yeah.
That means absolutely nothing, because I feel kind of what you said, 100% it's control. And it's one of the first things that people will do. And it's men, women.
Mhm.
That's the first thing that they'll do is cut off the financial, whether that's credit cards,
Hmm.
accounts. I mean, even we had to I don't want to say what is not reinstall the service. I'm having a hard time with words today, so I apologize to everybody. But like the streaming service,
To
like even that,
reactivate.
yeah, we had to reactivate streaming service because even that had gotten cut off. And
Yeah.
the kids, were home and different things like that. So there's a lot that actually goes into this. And
Hmm.
also, it doesn't matter if you are someone who has a career or not, and
Mm-mm.
you're on the receiving end of this, because that is the first thing that they'll start to do is they'll start to cut off all of those financial streams. So,
Yeah, and it's just like anything else. It's a slow progression. And so, people don't notice it as much, or they just kind of think it's normal. Sometimes people get married young and they don't realize that it's not normal to have to account for every penny, or to, have to turn over their paycheck to the other person. So there's a lot, and it doesn't, I think that's the biggest misconception that I've seen with people is that if someone has never experienced any kind of abuse, they don't understand how'd you let yourself get in that situation?
Mhm.
And they don't understand that it isn't just a, flip a switch. It happens so slowly that you hardly even notice.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope, and the manipulation can be just so slow
Yeah.
over a long period of time, and then all of a sudden you have found yourself in a situation where there absolutely is no access to funds. So what would you say to someone who finds themselves in that situation if you were going to work with them in some way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's probably a little bit harder. And I honestly haven't been presented with that specifically where someone wouldn't have access. It probably would be the first step is to go back to the attorney to find out legally what could be done. Um,
Mhm.
and then, we could talk about a possible settlement and things like that. Sometimes people are fortunate to have family or friends that can help in the meantime, because the
Mhm.
most difficult thing, as we know, I mean, I experienced this, you have to have a retainer for an attorney right off the bat, and usually that's a minimum of $5,000, sometimes
Mhm.
more. And like in my personal situation, I was very fortunate to have family. I was in a terrible financial situation, and family was very helpful in that moment. Otherwise, I don't know what I would have done. And I think that that's often intentional, is
Mhm.
to be in a situation where you can't get help because you don't have the finances to do it. But and I don't know about in you guys' areas, but around here we have a domestic violence support center, and they have great resources. So I've directed people in that direction too, if they are in a situation where they've been cut off access to funds.
Mhm. That's amazing. Um,
Mhm.
do you mind sharing a little bit about your experience? We haven't even
Yeah,
talked about that yet, so maybe this is a good way to introduce that.
absolutely. No, I don't mind at all. I was married pretty young. I think that I was 21 when I got engaged and then got married maybe the next year. And things it was never a great situation. It was kind of one of those where, you it's been a slow progression towards things. And so anyway, so we were in kind of a situation where it was time to talk about having a family. I had some concerns about it, but I also, we wanted to go ahead and do that. And so I got pregnant, and almost immediately the relationship started to change. And, in hindsight, I think that it was not intentional maybe, but it was very convenient that I was in a vulnerable situation. You're pregnant, and so it makes you less likely to leave, easier to control, that sort of thing. So my ex-husband started, not coming home at night, acting really, really strangely, just not like himself. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I turned into a detective, always just questioning and always trying to figure out, and just spent a lot of my pregnancy in a lot of stress and angst. And so I would say, I think I was about 8 months pregnant, and things had really hit a breaking point. And I just decided, enough was enough. And so I did some further detective work, kind of went through his truck. He was asleep at the time, and found out that he had been, being unfaithful. He had been abusing drugs. And what was nice was, as much as I didn't want to see something like that, I kind of did, because I hated the way my life was going. And so it just gave this kind of clarity and finality right in that moment of, okay, you can't stay in this situation. It's not safe for you. It's not safe for the baby that you're going to have in about a month. And so
Mhm.
I just kind of laid out all the evidence that I found on our coffee table, and left. So yeah, it was, at the time, I remember just kind of being numb, but in hindsight, it was really the best thing, because like I said, there aren't often times that you have that much clarity in a single moment. And it was just very clear. It was like God just intervened and said, nope, you're not going to be in this situation anymore. And so we didn't spend any more time together. I filed for divorce, I think 3 weeks later, and then had my son, about a week after that, and went to my first court session with a week and a half year old infant. So yeah, it was pretty crazy taking a baby carrier through security in the courthouse and all that stuff. And so, my son's never known us together. The relationship is better now, but mostly, I have 100% physical and legal custody of my son, and he has a relationship with his dad. He doesn't see him that much, but it's mostly been like that throughout the course of their relationship.
Wow, that is incredible. The part that I love about your story is that you were done. Like that's all. And whenever you talked about God kind of intervening and like you're not going to be in this situation anymore, I feel like that's actually the point that so many people can relate to. I know Sara Elizabeth can relate to that. I can relate to that. It's that moment when you're just done, and something happens that actually validates what you're being told you're crazy about.
So true. Oh my gosh. Hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, because you're constantly being told you're crazy. Okay, I'll just say,
Paranoid.
yeah, all the paranoid things. I know I got accused all the time for everything that was actually happening with him,
Yeah.
And so whenever you actually have that tangible evidence to validate all of your intuition, everything that you thought may have been happening, and then you have that moment of like, okay, I'm done. Peace out. I'm out of here.
Right.
Like that happens.
Yeah, I remember actually smiling. I just thought about that a second ago. I remember when I found it, I smiled. I, just kind of found all the evidence of everything that was really going on that I had suspected. And I think it was because living in limbo it's like purgatory. It's just terrible. You don't even know, like you said, you're being told that you're crazy. So you're second guessing everything. I mean, I remember having to just kind of unwind everything that I had been told, and it took a while. You're told that black is white and white is black for so long, and then finally you have to, it's like a haze that you have to step out of. So it took quite a while, and it took really strong boundaries and some of those books that I've mentioned to you, Lori, that you finally you open up and you read, and this is just this pattern that so many others have experienced, and it's like, okay, this sounds familiar and I'm not crazy.
Yeah, I'm going to actually thank you for bringing up the books. I don't remember what the books are now, but Anne Marie had some books that she recommended, and so I think we should definitely put that in the comments or in the description below. So for anyone who would like to see her recommendations, they were really amazing. Sara, do you want to speak to that moment whenever you were finally validated and you're like, okay, yeah, something's got to change, and it's me.
For me, that moment was a breaking point, because it did get to that place so slowly, and I had these realizations initially that it's not possible for any one person to absolutely be doing everything wrong. And so once I allowed that to set in, and I was like, okay, something has to change, and it has to be me, because as we're speaking to, boundaries are so, so important.
Yeah.
And that's been the biggest part of my journey, is learning to actually set boundaries, because, there are those of us who have come from a background beginning in childhood of domestic violence and different forms of abuse. And we really we come into these relationships with no real understanding of what normal or healthy looks like. So it's been quite a journey for myself as well.
Probably because the normal has been chaotic. And so then you exist in chaos growing up, and then you
Mm-hmm.
go right into a relationship, and it's like, well, this probably isn't right, but it feels right. So I'm just going to keep going for it.
Well, our nervous systems actually learn to regulate too. We feel regulated,
Yeah.
in the body when we are used to those states. And so we continue to look for it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because I had never been alone, ever. And
Mm-hmm.
when I had met my ex-husband, I was out of a very long relationship, only a short amount, just a little bit of time, maybe less than a month. But the gift is that when I went through my divorce, I was single from 2009 to 2016. And so I think being on your own, you
Mm-hmm.
start to unwind some of that programming. You can do the work, you can do the therapy, you can do the healing, and really get comfortable with you, which I never was. I mean, I was young, but I also just wasn't comfortable alone or with myself. And then you finally become that way, and then you're perhaps able to be in a healthy relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that for sure, as far as taking some space for yourself to just really get serious about your healing work. And I know that for Lori and I both, a huge part of that has been, using the tools of emotional clearing. So,
Oh my gosh. The work you
yeah.
guys do is so amazing. I mean, I want to learn more about it, but I don't even I can't think of any other folks that are in that space, and it's so needed because it's like there isn't a reason to feel shame about what we've been through. Um, and then you guys are providing that safe space, and then you're also providing the tools so people can move through it. It's just really an amazing thing.
Mhm.
Thank you. I appreciate that because honestly, without this work, I don't think, well, I know I wouldn't be here because a lot of this for me, just kind of like what Sarah Elizabeth said, I think we don't realize the conditioning that we experience in the early years of our lives. And that's actually where we're operating from. It's from
Mhm.
those years. And
Yeah.
so whenever there is a traumatic imprint or something like that, that that is exactly who's steering the wheel. So if something happened when you were 3 years old, that 3 year old is actually steering the wheel
Mhm.
on your path of
Yeah.
life. And so it's been crazy. And it's been really evident too in our conversations with Ennis Barger that we're able to actually even be in a place, a sovereign place, to have conversations that are triggering to others, I guess you could say in a way, but also just it's the empathy that I have developed for all of these personality types that we engage with whenever
Mhm.
we're in these relationships that may be considered unhealthy or toxic or abusive or whatever word that you want to say. It's just been incredible to be in this sovereign place. Like I'm in a very different place than I was when I thought I had been healed and I thought I had forgave and I thought,
Mm.
all of these things and I thought I had moved on. It's true healing that's happening now that we're experiencing, at least in my family. So
Mhm.
it's been
Yeah. And you
incredible.
can think you're past it, and then something happens, and it's like, oh, I actually am not. So, yeah, amazing what you
Yeah.
guys are doing.
Yeah. Well, thank
Mm,
you. Oh, did you want to say something?
I was just gonna say, right back to you. It's amazing what you're providing as a service that is so so needed, um, and so far and few between is apparently what it seems. So I don't know um, how many more people out there would be interested in doing work like that, but just so grateful that you are here to have this conversation with us.
Yeah, it just, it's I've gotten to be more and more intuitive through my journey, but when I'm helping someone and it doesn't necessarily mean that they've come from as dramatic of a situation as my story or anything, but just seeing that you can be an advocate for someone and you have the tools and resources and knowledge to be able to help them navigate such a difficult time, it feels like such an honor. And I found that people are very, very grateful because they just don't know where to go. And like I said, there's a real lack of trust, and they can't trust their ex, of course. Their family doesn't know how to help them. Their friends also just kind of, oh, stick it to the jerk, that sort of thing. And it's like the legal system is not great. Sometimes attorneys can be good and sometimes they are not so good. So it's like they come out of a bad situation, but then here they are in this no man's land where they don't know who to trust. So it feels like a big honor to be able to help in a time like that.
I love it. Can I ask you a question that kind of takes us back to your experience?
Of course.
Okay, so this year there was actually someone with the giving tree that ended up going into labor as well. She went into labor right as all of this was going on. And so how do you feel, let's see, how did you step into that space of being brave and courageous with, I'm guessing you were 9 months pregnant.
Yeah.
Probably. Okay, so 9 months pregnant and just saying, I'm done. I'm done. I want, I'm moving forward. I'm filing for divorce, all of these things. I'm going to create a better life. Would you mind speaking more on that?
Sure. Yeah, my heart goes out to her. That's such a hard situation. I think that, it was the clarity in that moment, but then it was like, I wasn't strong at all. I was quite weak. And if I hadn't had, it makes me emotional, sorry. If I wouldn't have had the amazing support system and my family and friends, I would have never made it through. So they just kind of circled the wagons. And I remember my best friend, she's a school teacher. So this happened during the summer and she was off, and she just stayed with me. And so if I wasn't staying with someone at my house, then I was staying at my parents' house because they lived about a mile away. And they just knew that I was not safe to be around my ex, because not only because of the potential, they didn't know what could happen when drugs are involved, but also because I could have gotten sucked back in. You're just at such a vulnerable state. And the tugging at the heartstrings of we're going to have a baby and, all of this. So they really, really stepped up. And then what happened was, that then about a month later, I did go into labor. One of my very best friends was in the room with me. She was incredible too. So I went into labor at 3 a.m, called her, and she said, I'll meet you at the hospital. My mom and my aunt drove me there. And through the process, my ex was actually there, but he wasn't really there. He was really out of it. And I remember when my son was born, it was again, one of those God moments. I looked down at him, they put him on my chest, and everything else just faded away. So it was just this very clear, like tunnel vision, him and I, and the whole room just kind of faded. And again, it was just really, really clear. My friend stayed overnight with me in the hospital because I was there one night. My ex had said he wanted to, but he was just not present and not able to be there. And again, everything just worked out how it needed to. But I just, that support system was amazing. I just couldn't have done it without them.
Thank you for sharing that with me, with us, I guess.
Yeah,
So, well, and I hope that the person you're referring to, I certainly hope that she has that as well. And if you're involved, that's just great. It's just a hard time. It's very vulnerable. You're exhausted. Your hormones are going crazy. Your emotions are high. I remember just having a breaking point a few days after, because my son was not a good sleeper from the very
Yeah.
beginning. And he just was, crying. I wasn't getting any sleep, and my mom was there at my house, and my ex called, and I wasn't strong enough to not pick up the phone. And he was just not making sense and saying all these things. And I remember my mom just took my phone and she just said, you can't speak to her like that. She just had a baby, and it was just this protection. And she hung up on him. I didn't have the strength to do it, so she did it for me. She just hung up the phone.
I think that's super important, actually, what you're talking about with that support system, right? And
Mhm.
having people be able to speak up for you and to just kind of handle things in a way, especially when you're so vulnerable in that state of the hormones and just everything else. But I think also just in general, right? It's important to have
Yeah.
these people in our lives that will speak for you when you don't have that voice.
Mhm.
Yeah, and we've all gone through times where we're weak. If people know me now, I mean, that was 2009. That was a long time ago, but they say, I just can't even imagine you in that state. Well, I was, and it wasn't pretty. And I think that we all can remember those times. So if I've had the opportunity to help friends or other people going through that, it's a really good lesson to remember. Like, we've all been there.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think even as strong as you can be, it can happen again too. I feel whenever, I mean, I'm
Mhm.
thinking about it because usually it's you're blindsided. That's usually what
Yeah.
happens is you're blindsided. The rug has been, ripped out from under your feet. And that can happen at any point. So I do
Yeah.
feel like, that's one of the
Mhm.
things that we talk about a lot is having these authentic connections, these relationships where we do have people to lean on in times of need, and also vice versa, right? Of having
Mhm.
a community and support.
No, it's so important. And, like I think I mentioned to you that a few months ago, I did a talk to a group of single moms, and I told them, I said, I know it doesn't seem like it now, but someday this is going to be a part of your story that you can hopefully attribute to it being a turning point, and you can know that you're becoming the person that you're meant to be because of this journey. I know fully that I would not be where I'm at today if I hadn't gone through that. But at the time, it seems like, why me? The world is ending. I mean, it's just seems terrible, but like anything else, there's always a plan.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah. I fully believe that what we experience cultivates us into the person we are to become. So,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely, 100%. Wouldn't trade
Mhm.
any of it for the world.
No, no. I mean, I don't want to go back and go through it again,
Right.
but you wouldn't trade it, you wouldn't. Yeah, and like I said, it really makes for a big why. People always talk about, well, why do you do this? What's your why? And I think about looking forward down the road. I would love to have a scholarship program for single moms to be able to help them in that time, whether they're going to go back to school, whether they're just, starting their own business, just something to give back, because I don't know that there's a lot of things out there just like that. There's help for that time right in that moment when they leave. But I think about, what about a little bit later when they want to
Mhm.
past, and start, because you thought your life was going this direction and it's not, it's going over here. And so what help could I provide on that journey?
You just nailed it, actually. That's
Totally.
a, that's why we do what we do. It's
Mhm.
because there is a lot of help for in the moment, right? That emergency moment of there's all kinds of resources,
Yep.
but there's not really a lot of resources for after. And when I'm talking after, I'm talking we're, like at least a year, 5 years, 10 years after, because you do have to pick up where you do have to now build a life and create a life. And it's like, how do you do that? So I love that you even brought that up because you said you want to start a foundation, right?
Yeah,
That's
that's definitely
beautiful.
part of the goal. Yeah, but and what you guys do, it's like maybe they are not ready for that immediately. I'm sure they aren't, but to be able to change the pattern and to do things differently, you have to heal. And so you guys are providing that, which is amazing. Really is.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. One of the things that I noticed, I'll speak for myself, is that I realized it wasn't enough for me to, first of all, leave the relationship. And then enough time has passed since I've experienced all of this that I've actually been in other relationships. And also now my children have grown. And I saw myself repeating the patterns, even though I had left the relationship. So I saw myself repeating my own patterns. And then I saw, how it was now being repeated in my children as well. So it's something, this is like super deep work because we are breaking these patterns ancestrally and generationally. So I'm glad that you even brought that part up. But I love how you are stepping into this role to help others in this way, because I have so many people that I actually want to send this episode to.
Yeah.
The second that it's published, because so many people just don't know where to begin, just like what you said. And I even have some very successful people in my life who have they're trust fund babies and all kinds of things. And the same thing happened to them that's happened to people who may not feel as if they have a lot of assets or financial. I feel like most people, even in that situation, they walked away.
Yeah.
Even though they had everything, they had billions, and they still walked away. So I feel like it just affects everyone at the same heart level, I guess. And so whenever you're saying, yeah, you just want to walk away, you just want to be done, you just want the relief.
Well, and it doesn't discriminate. And I think there's definitely a stigma that I'm not a huge fan of when people think of a single mom or, divorce. And there's, having gone through it, there's just no judgment, and there shouldn't be, but I guess it's just something that maybe has to be experienced in order to get to that point. But that would be a hope too, is to really work hard to change that. Everyone can be, in a vulnerable moment and, fall, I don't like to use the word victim, but I guess fall victim to a situation that just kind of snowballs. That's what it seemed like in my situation. It was like, I remember the first time I went on a date with my ex-husband, and I kind of knew, maybe there's some red flags here. And I remember thinking in my mind, well, it's not like I'm going to marry him. And it was like, well, actually, it did go that direction. So it seems like if you're not in the greatest place, things can kind of just go along. And so the point is that can happen pretty easily to anyone.
That slippery slope. Can I ask you another question? Do we have time?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So what happens? So do people come to you when they're in the process of divorce and all that? But what happens after they've already had the settlement and everything? Can they come to you after that?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times that's what happens is we'll work together through the process. And then once things are settled, generally assets are freed up. A lot of times, maybe even if as a married couple, they had a financial advisor, they don't want to continue working. It feels like a conflict a little bit to stay with the same person. And so they will have me manage the assets, which is primarily what I do, along with helping people go through the divorce. So typically speaking, they'll engage me at the beginning, but I can also help kind of at any stage along the way, especially if they want to go a different direction and maybe they don't feel comfortable with their current advisor, or they just need an advisor. Sometimes they've never, maybe the other spouse actually managed things on their behalf without an advisor, but they would like to work with someone. So there's a lot of different situations where I can come into that relationship.
Okay, amazing. Because honestly, I don't think people even think about it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's everything kind of gets turned on its head, and that's the last thing that people want to think about in that moment. But as things go down the road, a lot of times they don't feel comfortable using the same person, for a lot of reasons.
So what have you seen that has been the biggest impact with you doing, like, what is your, I'd love to hear some experiences if you're able to share.
Yeah. Yeah, I can talk high level about it. One just came up the other day, and it wasn't actually due to a divorce. It was someone that I've worked for quite some time, and she came to me after she lost her husband, and we've become friends. And I manage her assets for her, but we met for wine a couple of weeks ago, and she actually was sharing with another person that was with us that the impact that I'd had on her life, and I didn't really realize it. She just was in not a great place, having lost her husband. He had been ill for a long time, and where his assets were before, they didn't seem like they cared at all when he passed away. So she was recommended to me, and we worked together, and she was pretty intimidated by things. And so it was pretty wonderful to come together, and she's remarried now. And I actually attended her wedding. My husband and I went to her wedding, that was not here. It was an destination wedding. But anyways, it was really neat to hear the impact that our relationship and friendship had on her in a really positive way. So that was great. And I think we'll continue working together for a long time. And then there's been other situations where, you someone's going through a divorce, and I'm looking over things, maybe the husband has presented a proposal and it just isn't fair. And they're not quite understanding. It doesn't feel right, but they're not understanding why. And so it's been nice to be able to say, hey, this actually isn't even or fair for these reasons. And so you need to go back to the attorney and explain, that you're not going to settle for this, and this is why. So that's been another example, is just, it feels impactful and kind of satisfying. Like, oh, they were kind of trying to get one over on you, and we're not going to let them.
Well, I love that
Rewarding.
you were able to give back in that way, right? And now
Yeah.
you're the voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Sarah Elizabeth, was there anything that you wanted to ask or learn more about?
I don't think at this time. I'm sort of just absorbing it all.
Hmm. How about you, Anne Marie? Is there anything else that you wanted to share about your big why or your experiences or what you do?
Maybe just that, I just really emphasize that people shouldn't feel intimidated. It can be an intimidating process, but I posted a little meme the other day, but it was something along the lines of, you don't want to look at the enormity of a situation. You want to just kind of take one step at a time. And so maybe, if someone is faced with a situation like this, that first step is seeing if a friend will go with them to an attorney's office and just kind of get some guidance. Or maybe it's talking to a counselor, or maybe it's seeing someone like me. But just taking one step, and it never hurts to arm yourself with information. Never hurts to read some of the books, like what we're referring to and that you'll post. So just taking a little step can feel really good, and it can make people feel really courageous and empowered.
I love this. I'm just so excited. So excited to share it all. Okay, so how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so it probably would make the most sense to just put the information in the comments, if that's, but I work in Redding, California. I'm with a company called Stiefel, and then, if you want to post the phone number and the email in the comments, that's the best way to get a hold of me. And generally, the way that it works is for a consultation, especially one that's an hour or less, there's not an initial charge for that. And so I'm just kind of seeing if I can be of help and seeing if I can help give some direction and guidance is the way it usually goes.
Quick question on that. Do you have to be in the same state, or can it be? I don't know. I know nothing about this because
Yeah.
I'm the person that walked away.
Yeah, no, I have clients all over,
Okay.
even as far away as Malaysia, one of my clients is. But as far as for an attorney, each state has their own laws. So that would be a collaboration, I don't give legal advice. It's, any kind of law related questions we would direct to the attorney in the state that they reside. But it doesn't, I don't have to work with someone in my own state of California.
Okay. So it is international and global.
Yeah.
Okay.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing. Do you mostly do it remote, then through Zoom? Does it have to be in person? Yeah, it can.
We do a lot of Zoom. I mean, that's one great thing about COVID is I didn't really know how to use Zoom before, and now I do. People would talk about it like, sounds really intimidating, and now of course, here we are. We do it all the time.
I think that is one thing that was a gift with COVID, is it really expanded all of the ways that we all communicate, right?
It really did. I know. I remember like having wine with people over like a virtual happy hour, which felt strange, but we wanted to be connected, so we did what we had to do. But I'm glad that the mandatory part of not being together is over.
Yeah, me too. I love people and connection. But yeah, it's been great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing a piece of who you are with us, and for just doing the work that you do on such a intentional level. I love that part. Mhm.
Oh, thank you to you guys for having me so much. And likewise, thank you for the work that you do. It's very, very much needed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you to everyone who joined us for this episode, and are watching or listening. We're just so incredibly grateful for you. If you enjoy this type of content, please like it so that we know that this is what you're looking for. If you know someone that could use this information, please share this episode. And then if you are someone who enjoys everything that we bring, we try to come on at least once a week, and we bring in the special guests for the resource playlist, or even we'll do teachings and different things like that. So please subscribe so that you get the notification for the next show that comes out. Also, if you're interested in learning more about what Sara Elizabeth and I do with emotional clearing, we are holding a Zion retreat in April of next year. So Zion, Utah, I don't know if anyone is familiar with that, but it is one of the most beautiful places in the world to me. Have you been there, Anne Marie? I can't remember if we talked about it.
No, my business partner, Courtney, went there for spring break last year, and she said it was amazing.
It is.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. It's one of my happy places for sure. So if anyone is interested in that, it is April 10th through the 14th. We'll have a link below so you can go and check that out. And this is literally how Sara Elizabeth and I create a life that we love after abuse. So thank you. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
And live your life today. It doesn't matter.